Democratic New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand formally announced her entrance into the 2020 presidential race today. She appeared in her hometown of Troy, New York, speaking to reporters beside her family. Here's some of what she had to say.
My mother's mother also never went to college. But she organized women for a generation so that their voices matter, so that they could be heard in our political process. And my mom, she dared me to be different because she dared to be different. She went to law school when very few women worked outside the home. She was one of the only 3 women in her law school class. And
That may have been her formal announcement, but she actually broke the news she was running last night in an interview with The Late Show's Stephen Colbert. There, Gillibrand vowed she would take on, quote, systems of power she says are holding Americans back. Let's bring in now Caitlin Huey-Burns and Laura Nahmias. Caitlin is a CBSN political reporter. Laura is a reporter for Politico New York and writes the New York Playbook morning newsletter. Welcome, Laura and Caitlin. Great to have you here. So, Caitlin, let's start with you. What does Gillibrand bring to the table for the Democrats?
Well, this is a very crowded field. We know that many candidates are interested in running, and several have already announced exploratory committees in different ways that they're getting into this race. So it will be a crowded field, but she's trying to kind of carve out her niche in this field as, playing up women's issues and kind of the gender issues. She was very active in the 2018 campaigning for candidates and also using her super PAC called Off the Sidelines to help promote and recruit women to run for office. So she's very much played into those issues. But there will be this question of how she can do in this kind of field. She's heading to Iowa this weekend to kind of test out her message across the state, and we'll be watching to see how she's received.
It's kind of a good gamble to make. A lot of people say 2020 could be the election of the woman. So, she's putting herself out there early, that's, part of her platform. But Laura, she came to Congress as a centrist, and we know the pressure has been to be pushing her a little bit to the left since then. Where do you think she's ultimately going to land?
I think that she's shown herself over time. You're correct. She came into the Senate with a more moderate record on things like guns, and she was formerly a corporate attorney who worked for a big tobacco company, and she really has recalibrated her positions. She's shown herself as someone who is capable of recalibrating even ahead of time to be in the right position when she needs to be politically.
Has she faced some criticism for that, for being a little opportunist, perhaps?
She has, but I think that her supporters point out that she moved positions. She hasn't moved in response to criticism, and she owns up to her moving positions on things like guns and says that it was a mistake, that she believed what she did and she regrets it.
She's willing to evolve.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Caitlin, she's also known to be a very successful fundraiser. What are some of her other strengths?
Well, yeah, she's a prolific fundraiser, especially when you compare her activity to other senators who are running. She also has the strength of being in the U.S. Senate. She has worked on several issues, particularly those related to sexual assault in the military. And she, of course, is prominently known for kind of leading the charge to oust Al Franken. And that's something, or her colleague, that's something that garnered mixed reviews. You had some people in the party, even some of those on the donor level, who were very critical of that decision, and also her criticism of Bill Clinton. You have others who were inspired by the choice.
I'm glad that you brought up her, targeting Al Franken, because here's what she had to say about that. I want to play some sound.
I will stand up for what I believe in, especially when it's hard. I just couldn't stay silent. My job was not to stay silent. I couldn't defend it, and I had to do what was right. And if some wealthy individuals, that makes them angry, that's on them.
This is the era of the Me Too movement. So will that help or hurt her campaign, Laura?
I think it's hard to say. We reported at Politico, we talked to a bunch of wealthy Democratic donors who have traditionally played that kind of kingmaker role in these primaries, who have said that they absolutely will not donate to her this cycle. The thing is that she and a lot of other candidates are trying to raise money not from those big donors in this cycle. They want to raise small dollar donations. They want to avoid taking corporate money. They want to do the Bernie Sanders. So that might not hurt her as much. And we haven't really seen any polling to suggest how the American people at large feel about what happened with Al Franken. But she is sticking by her position, and It's worth pointing out, too, that she has been out front on issues of sexual assault and sexual harassment for years before the Me Too movement actually took off.
Right. And it's also interesting, though, that she's basing her campaign headquarters in her hometown of Troy, New York. I mean, to me, it seems like she wants to send the message, hey, I may be from New York, but I'm really a small town girl, sort of bridge that urban-rural gap. Do you think there's a strategy behind it at all, Caitlin?
Well, the campaign also thinks that she has an electability argument to sell. I mean, to your point, she used to represent a very conservative district upstate, and she's kind of pointed to that in her appearance this morning, her press conference, about, look, I can talk to these people. I've represented other people outside of the kind of what we think of the progressive liberal base.
Right. Now, you bring up the likability issue, and a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, is this just because she's a woman? Is this something that female candidates are always going to face? Laura, what do you think?
I think that it's something that female candidates face at this point in time, but what's different now versus a few years ago is that we're recognizing that that is potentially something that is kind of a biased factor. So maybe in the future that won't come up as often.
So at least we're talking about it, whereas in the past we wouldn't. I mean, look, I guess every political candidate, male and female, faces a certain amount of a likability issue, right?
The beer test, right?
The beer test, there you go.
And, you know, with Gillibrand entering, we're having a record number already of women running for president.
Right.
We expect more to get into this race. And we've been reporting throughout the day about, you know, that there isn't necessarily a women's lane, right? There are very different ways to run, and these women who are running reflect different virtues and aspects of the party.
It is exciting to be a female politician today. There's a lot of company out there. It's an interesting field, and we love talking with you ladies about it. Laura, Caitlin, thank you so much for coming to see us.